Welcome. Today we're undertaking an in-depth exploration of a case that, well, it remains a stubborn contradiction right at the heart of the UK's intelligence community, the death of Gareth Williams. And this story is a deeply disturbing blend of top-secret operations, intense privacy, and a crime scene so improbable it forces you to question every single official explanation.
It really does. Gareth Williams was an analyst for GCHQ, that's Britain's signal intelligence agency, and he was on secondment to MI6 in London.
Right, the Secret Intelligence Service.
Exactly. And in August 2010, at just 31 years old, his life ended inside a supposedly secure flat in Pimlico. And the details of that final scene, they are precisely why, over a decade later, this case is still so profoundly unsettling.
The single image, the one that you just can't shake, is the discovery of his body. Gareth Williams was found naked, zipped inside a large red North Face sports bag.
A duffel bag.
Which was then padlocked from the outside and then placed into the bathtub of his ensuite bathroom.
And right there, that's the core conflict that all our sources grapple with. You have a senior coroner who, after hearing months of evidence and expert testimony, concluded the death was unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. She was satisfied he was killed unlawfully.
An unlawful killing?
Yes. But then, the Metropolitan Police's subsequent extensive reinvestigation concluded that the most probable scenario was that Williams died alone, accidentally locking himself inside that bag.
That gulf, unlawful killing versus a solitary accident, it's just massive. Our purpose today is to meticulously scrutinize the available sources, dissecting the conflicting evidence and, the institutional failures that allowed this contradiction to persist.
And we have to acknowledge the profound sensitivity of this material. This is a tragedy for Gareth Williams and his family, who've had to navigate these completely opposed official narratives for years.
Absolutely. So to really understand what's at stake here, I think we have to start with the man himself.
We do. To appreciate the stakes, we have to understand the caliber of the individual at the center of it. Gareth Williams was an exceptional mind, born in Anglesey, Wales, a proud Welsh speaker, and his academic trajectory was, well, it was nothing short of brilliant.
His brilliance showed up early, didn't it? And it was rapid. He actually began studying advanced mathematics part-time while he was still in secondary school. He was, intellectually sprinting while his peers were still learning to walk. This all culminated in him achieving a first-class honors degree from Bangor University when he was just 17 years old.
17. Just think about that. And he didn't slow down there. He went on to get a PhD from the University of Manchester. The sources really emphasize that Williams wasn't just highly educated. He possessed this rare aptitude for cryptography and complex problem solving.
Skills that are perfectly tailored for the world of signals intelligence.
Perfectly. Which is what led him, naturally, into that realm. In 2001, he joined GCHQ in Cheltenham.
And this was his preferred environment, wasn't it? Quiet, focused, out in the countryside. For nearly a decade, he rented a room in Prestbury. He was known there as an intensely private man who, cherished his routine and his bicycle.
He did. But the nature of his talents meant he was eventually needed elsewhere. By 2009, he was on the secondment to SIS or MI6 in London. He was serving as a junior analyst, housed in that secure government-owned flat at 36 Alderney Street in Pimlico.
And that move, it immediately altered his exposure profile. It shifted him from a technical, sort of unseen environment in Cheltenham right to the operational front lines in central London.
And this is crucial. The sources confirm he was immersed in highly volatile, high-stakes international intelligence work. He had recently qualified for operational deployment and was collaborating directly with the highest levels of U.S. intelligence.
The NSA and the FBI.
The NSA and the FBI, yes. His specific focus was tracing international money laundering routes.
Now, we need to pause here and really appreciate what that means. This isn't just basic white-collar crime tracing.
Not at all. He was dealing with the financial arteries of major global organized crime groups. The sources specifically mention he was focused on Moscow-based mafia cells.
So when you are tracking international money laundering on that scale, you're not just following paper trails. You are actively disrupting the foundational funding for these ruthlessly efficient, often state-adjacent criminal networks.
These are entities with global reach, vast resources, and frankly, zero tolerance for exposure. If Williams was getting close to identifying significant assets or agents, the danger level was just exponentially high.
Right. The work itself provides a clear and compelling potential motive for professional foul play. It links his death directly to the sensitive information he possessed.
Absolutely. But then you have to juxtapose that professional risk against his personal feelings about the job in London.
Yes. The sources paint a picture of a man who was profoundly unhappy with his immediate surroundings. He was, as we said, an intensely private individual, a keen cyclist. He preferred the solitude and physical exertion of rural life. He strongly disliked the culture he found at SIS.
It was characterized in the sources as the rat race. It involved flashcard competitions and a post-work drinking culture. For a highly introverted, intensely focused mathematician, this environment was just clearly draining and completely incompatible with his personality.
And this discontent is such a critical detail because he wasn't committed to the London Post long term.
No, not at all. The sources confirm he had formally requested to end his assignment and return to GCHQ in Cheltenham. His London second custom was actually due to finish very shortly, on September 3, 2010, right after his scheduled annual leave.
So if he was targeted because of his work, that timing is deeply significant.
That's incredibly significant. An adversary may have felt they had a very, very small window of opportunity to neutralize him before he returned to the deeper protection and more insular environment of GCHQ headquarters.
The convergence of that high operational risk and his imminent departure, it just creates a highly ambiguous context for his final days.
It does. Which brings us to the scene of the tragedy itself. And we have to start with the timeline of the discovery, which has drawn so much justified criticism.
It's devastating. The estimated date of death was the early hours of Monday, August 16, 2010. Williams was supposed to have attended a work meeting that Monday morning. He didn't show up.
And yet, the alarm bells did not truly ring for an entire week.
A whole week. The discovery itself only happened after colleagues initiated a welfare check. Police eventually entered the flat at 36 Alderney Street on Monday, August 23rd, a full 7 days after his suspected death.
That delay, that 7-day gap, is the primary ghost haunting this entire case. It's a catastrophic loss of forensic opportunity. I mean, no matter how advanced your forensic science is, volatile chemicals dissipate, trace DNA degrades.
Time-sensitive thermal readings are lost.
Exactly. And decomposition sets in, which fundamentally compromises your ability to determine the exact cause and mechanism of death.
And the scene itself was chilling, almost staged in its impossibility. Williams's remains were found inside that large, red North Face duffel bag in the ensuite bathtub of the main bedroom. He was naked, and the body was already decomposing.
And what made the decomposition so much worse was another baffling detail. The flat's central heating had been turned on.
In August,
in London. The heat accelerated the breakdown of soft tissue, contributing significantly to the loss of forensic evidence, particularly for things like toxicology and trace chemical analysis.
But the key forensic puzzle is, of course, the bag. The zipper was fully closed, and the 2 zipper tabs were secured together by a small padlock. And crucially, that padlock was locked from the outside.
And this is where the puzzle just enters the realm of the absurd. The key to that very padlock was found inside the zipped and locked bag underneath Williams's body.
Right, so this single fact requires either an external killer who locked the bag and then somehow slipped the key back inside, which is physically impossible.
Or it requires the victim to perform an almost physically impossible feat of self-locking.
Let's talk about the forensic absences, because they're just as significant as what was there.
They really are. First, there was no evidence of forced entry into the flat. However, the integrity of that scene was immediately questionable. The door and its locks were removed by MI6 personnel or police before forensic experts could thoroughly examine them.
That act alone just instantly creates suspicion about the chain of custody.
Of course it does. And more damningly, investigators found no injuries or defensive wounds on the body. Toxicology tests confirmed the absence of alcohol or common recreational drugs. Now, the decomposition complicated the analysis, but there was no obvious physical trauma.
And the lack of fingerprints. I mean, this presents a major challenge to the accidental death theory. Police found absolutely no fingerprints from Williams on the padlock itself or on the rim of the bath surrounding the bag.
Which you would expect. If he had climbed in or struggled or locked himself in, you'd expect transfer of some epidermal oils or prints.
The absence strongly suggests the bag was lowered in by someone wearing gloves, or by someone performing a maneuver so pristine it just defies logic.
And then there's the DNA. The findings initially just added to the confusion. Fragments of DNA from at least 2 other individuals were found on the zipper toggle and the bag handles.
Right, but investigators later tried to dismiss these.
They did. They tried to dismiss them as cross-contamination, a process that involves some pretty intense scrutiny and some controversial methodology. But that initial finding pointed away from a solitary event.
The family, who were understandably skeptical given everything, alleged publicly that crucial DNA evidence was interfered with. They said that fingerprints left at the scene had been intentionally removed as part of a cover-up.
And the coroner later explicitly criticized that 7-day delay in reporting him missing, regardless of who was responsible for the death. She said it compounded the family's suffering and severely limited the investigation's effectiveness.
Which seems undeniable. Once the death was confirmed, the security apparatus of the British state immediately took over the inquiry, didn't it? And that changed its nature entirely.
It did. Almost instantly, there was a security blockade. We know that the heads of SIS and the Metropolitan Police met very early on to manage the inquiry because of the explosive nature of Williams's work and his direct collaboration with U.S. agencies.
This signaled to everyone that this was not going to be a standard homicide investigation.
No. And this is where political intervention became formal. The U.S. State Department requested maximum secrecy regarding Williams's work. To comply, the then Foreign Secretary, William Hague, signed what's called a Public Interest Immunity Certificate, a PII certificate.
For anyone listening, we should probably clarify what that is. A PII certificate is a powerful legal instrument that allows the government to legally withhold specific documents or details from court proceedings,
Including a coroner's inquest.
right, on the grounds that disclosing them would harm the national interest or public safety.
And the use of that certificate here immediately fueled suspicion of a cover-up. By legally mandating that details about Williams's operational duties and his joint ops with the NSA and FBI be withheld from the inquest, it created an intentional veil of opacity.
It prevented the coroner and the public from fully assessing the professional risks he faced.
Exactly. It effectively steered the investigation away from the espionage angle right from the very start.
And perhaps in an attempt to counter that narrative of MI6-related foul play, the police allowed details of Williams's personal life to leak, which, well, the media sensationalized them almost immediately.
They did. This included the fact that he had intermittently visited bondage websites, though the activity was noted to be for short periods, usually 30 minutes to an hour at a time, and police stressed there was no evidence of obsession.
They also highlighted the approximately 25,000 pounds worth of high-end women's clothing found in his wardrobe. And while these details provide some context on his private interests, the way they were released and amplified, it led to suggestions that the death was linked to some form of sexual activity or autoerotic asphyxiation gone wrong.
Which the coroner later addressed head-on. She rejected the involvement of sexual activity or autoerotic practice in his death. She strongly condemned the leaks about cross-dressing as a possible attempt at media manipulation.
That's a huge implication, isn't it? A suggestion that state agencies might have deliberately leaked details about his private life to pivot public attention away from a potential assassination and onto a tragic, self-inflicted incident related to sexual deviance.
It's a massive implication. And this personal context also included a strange incident that happened 3 years earlier in Cheltenham.
Right, while he was working for GCHQ, his landlady found him tied to his bedposts, shouting for help. He claimed he was just testing his ability to get free and exercise in escapology.
The landlady and her husband had to cut him loose. They, along with later investigators trying to piece together a narrative, believed the incident was likely sexual rather than escapology. And this event became a cornerstone for those advocating the self-infliction theory,
suggesting a pattern of fascination with confinement or restraint that might explain his final bizarre predicament.
Exactly. Meanwhile, the initial investigation also pursued external leads.
Well,
They all went cold. Police released an e-fict photo of 2 individuals described as a Mediterranean couple who were seen entering the communal entrance of the Pimlico flat complex.
but that went nowhere.
It went nowhere. Police later definitively determined that these individuals had nothing to do with the inquiry. They were simply misidentified residents or visitors. Another false trail that consumed valuable resources and time.
And we can't overlook the compounding effects of that major forensic blunder. Early on, DNA found on Williams's hand was initially and very sensationally attributed to an unknown third party.
Right, suggesting a struggle or direct contact with an assailant. It caused immediate alarm.
And the reality, as it turned out, was profoundly disappointing and just, damaging to the investigation's credibility. The DNA contamination came from one of the forensic scientists. It was a wholly internal error.
The forensic company, LGC, had to issue an apology. So the cumulative impact of the delayed reporting, the PII certificate creating secrecy, and then significant forensic errors. It just served to erode public trust and severely complicate the narrative for Williams's grieving family.
The sheer volume of these contradictions, the locked bag, the lack of prints, the accelerated decomposition, it meant the inquest led by coroner Fiona Wilcox became a real battleground between physical reality and theoretical possibility.
And the central question for the coroner was intensely focused. Was it physically possible for Gareth Williams to have locked himself inside that bag naked and unaided? And the answer required rigorous testing, not just speculation.
This is where the technical details are so crucial. 2 expert witnesses were called to test the self-locking hypothesis. They used a similar red North Face bag and were instructed to attempt the maneuver. The results were damning for the accidental theory.
The experts made an astonishing 400 attempts to lock themselves inside the bag.
400.
And in 0 instances were they successful. The challenge lay in the physical mechanics. Once you're zipped up, the position of your shoulders and the direction of the zipper mechanism make it nearly impossible to reach back and manipulate that tiny padlock catch, especially without leverage while you're contorted inside that confined space.
So it's basically impossible.
One expert, while failing to do it himself, conceded there was a small chance it might be technically possible. But the overwhelming consensus presented to the coroner was that Williams could not have locked the bag himself. And this evidence was central to her final determination.
And the pathological evidence seemed to back that up.
It did. Pathologist Richard Shepard suggested that because of the very specific contorted position in which Williams's body was found, he was most likely still alive when he entered or was placed inside the bag. He said positioning a corpse in that manner would have been extremely difficult.
So if he was alive, the manner of death would have been terrifyingly rapid.
Incredibly rapid. Another pathologist determined that once the bag was zipped and locked, Williams would have been overcome by hypercapnia, that's elevated carbon dioxide levels, in just 2 or 3 minutes.
2 or 3 minutes.
That's all. Hypercapnia occurs because the small air supply is rapidly exhausted, and the victim quickly begins rebreathing their own exhaled CO2. This rapidly lowers blood oxygen levels and causes unconsciousness and death within minutes.
So any struggle, any attempt to escape would have been cut brutally short.
Which aligns with the lack of defensive wounds. It points strongly toward a sudden, incapacitating mechanism of death, possibly involving poison or rapid suffocation.
And this overwhelming combination of physical impossibility and rapid death led coroner Fiona Wilcox to her powerful, clear conclusion on May 2nd, 2012.
She delivered a narrative verdict. She found that, on the balance of probabilities, which is the legal standard for inquests, Williams' death was unnatural and likely to have been criminally mediated. She stated explicitly, "I am satisfied that on the balance of probabilities that Gareth was killed unlawfully."
Her conclusion was so direct, she was satisfied that another party placed the bag containing Williams into the bath and, crucially, locked the bag from the outside.
And she suggested the likely cause of death was either rapid CO2 poisoning or the use of a short-acting poison introduced shortly after he was secured inside.
But her verdict wasn't just about the cause of death, was it? It included this blistering condemnation of the security agency's handling of the case.
It did. She criticized SIS for the 7-day failure to report him missing, noting this negligence directly caused the loss of crucial forensic evidence and exacerbated the family's anguish. It was a clear finding of a failure of their duty of care.
And she also openly condemned the media leaks about his private life, suggesting they were a deliberate attempt at media manipulation.
Yes, essentially the judiciary accusing the security apparatus of trying to shift the blame away from espionage and homicide and onto a bizarre personal mishap.
And then there was the revelation about the memory sticks.
Perhaps the most damaging revelation for the police. She criticized the Metropolitan Police's Counterterrorism Command, SO-15, for failing to disclose the existence of 9 memory sticks and other property found in Williams' SIS office before the inquest began.
And the fact that SO-15 was involved is significant, right? The use of a counterterrorism unit for a potential homicide immediately signals the investigation was considered highly sensitive, potentially politically charged.
Absolutely. And their failure to disclose those memory sticks suggested to the coroner that the police were either incompetent or deliberately obfuscating information. It made the possible involvement of SIS staff a legitimate line of inquiry that had not been properly pursued.
After this explosive verdict, the family released a statement, and they voiced their belief.
They did. They stated they believed a member of some agency specializing in the dark arts of the Secret Services was involved in his death. For them, the coroner's forceful, evidence-based verdict just solidified their suspicion of professional foul play and a cover-up.
So the coroner's verdict of unlawful killing, along with her very high-profile criticism of SIS and the police, it was essentially a public demand for accountability.
It was, and this prompted the Metropolitan Police to launch a comprehensive 12-month reinvestigation into the matter.
And this reinvestigation was significant because the police claimed they were granted unprecedented access to serving MI6 staff.
Yes, this was supposed to address the issues of secrecy and lack of cooperation that the coroner had highlighted. They re-examined all the evidence, including those failed self-locking attempts, and they conducted new interviews.
The expectation was that this would either confirm the coroner's finding or, definitively prove the self-locking theory with some new piece of evidence. But when Deputy Assistant Commissioner Martin Hewitt announced the final police stance in November 2013, the result was a complete rejection of the coroner's conclusion.
A complete reversal. The police ruling stood firm. Despite all the new access, they found no definitive evidence of third-party involvement. The official ruling was that the most probable scenario was that Williams died alone in his flat as the result of accidentally locking himself inside the bag.
This is where we have to apply maximum critical scrutiny. The police essentially elevated a remote, theoretically possible scenario, one which two experts failed to replicate 400 times over the evidence-based balance of probabilities standard used by the judiciary, which pointed to homicide.
And they offered a sophisticated justification to explain that critical lack of forensic evidence. Hewitt suggested it was theoretically possible for Williams to have lowered himself into the bag while already zipped up, or performed the maneuver without touching the rim of the bath or the padlock.
Just think about the physics involved there. This explanation is trying to account for the crucial absence of his fingerprints on the bath rim and the padlock. It requires an extraordinary act of contortion, performed naked, alone, in a confined space, with precision movements that defy the physical realities that were demonstrated during the inquest.
The police's conclusion rests entirely on the premise that Williams executed an impossible maneuver perfectly, resulting in his accidental demise, may be linked to his prior interest in self-confinement.
It just forces you to ask, how can an investigative body reject the strong forensic conclusion of the coroner, who heard all the same evidence and instead prioritized the least likely explanation?
To many, this reversal, coming after unprecedented access to MI6, suggested that bureaucratic convenience and the protection of intelligence assets had overridden the pursuit of justice and forensic reality.
The police did acknowledge they couldn't rule out third-party involvement, especially given the 7-day delay.
They did, but they stated there was simply no evidence to support it. And this ambiguity essentially allowed the intelligence services to avoid the coroner's finding of unlawful killing, leaving the Williams family in this perpetual state of contradiction between a judicial ruling of homicide and a police ruling of accident.
And because those official conclusions remained fundamentally irreconcilable, the cases remained open in the public mind, allowing alternative theories rooted in espionage to persist.
And to gain traction. The most sensational of these theories emerged in 2015, linking Williams's death directly back to his sensitive work tracing organized crime funds.
This came from claims made by a former KGB agent, Boris Karpichkov, who had defected and lives in the UK.
Yes. Karpichkov claimed that his sources in Russia pointed to the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, the SVR, being directly responsible for the murder, and the narrative he put forth provided a chilling specific motive rooted in high-stakes espionage.
The alleged motive wasn't just about money laundering, but about protecting a major Russian asset. Karpichkov claimed the SVR had tried to blackmail Williams into becoming a double agent, using information they'd gleaned from his private life.
And when Williams refused, he allegedly threatened to expose a high-value Russian spy operating inside GCHQ Williams's home base.
So according to this claim, Williams's threat to expose the agent escalated the situation beyond coercion. It forced the SVR to decide to exterminate him immediately to protect their agent inside the British intelligence hierarchy.
It's the ultimate insider threat scenario. And Karpichkov even provided a detailed, if unproven, alleged method of execution. An untraceable poison introduced through his ear, which would explain the lack of physical struggle, the lack of external injury, and the rapid collapse that led to him being placed inert into the bag.
That theory provides a complete, if unverified, narrative that aligns the extreme method of death with his operational exposure.
It does. And while it remains a single-source claim, its existence highlights the enduring difficulty in accepting the police's accident ruling, especially when the victim was tangling with organizations capable of executing such complex, untraceable assassinations.
And it's important to recognize the cultural resonance of this mystery, isn't it?
Yeah.
The 2015 BBC Two television series London Spy was loosely based on the Williams case.
It was. The sources confirm that the narrative of professional intrigue, assassination, and government cover-up capture the public imagination far more vividly than the narrative of a bizarre, isolated accident.
And then, fast forward nearly a decade after that police reversal, and the case continues to generate movement.
It does. In 2024, the Metropolitan Police concluded a further independent evidence review, which was prompted by a prior forensic report in 2023.
And this review is specifically focused on re-examining the critical DNA evidence, trying one last time to definitively prove or dismiss the presence of a third party.
But the conclusion mirrored the police's long-standing position. The review found no new findings of DNA that could be conclusively linked to an external assailant. It confirmed there was no evidence that a third party was present at the time of Williams's death.
So it essentially reinforced the police's earlier accidental death conclusion, even while failing to explain the physical impossibility that underpinned the coroner's original forceful verdict.
Exactly. So after years of investigations, a damning inquest, a high-level police reinvestigation, and a recent forensic review, the fundamental contradiction remains perfectly intact. We have the judiciary's conclusion of an unlawful, criminally mediated killing set against the security services and police's persistent ruling of a solitary, bizarre accident.
And the core tragedy here is that the systemic failure, that inexcusable 7-day delay in reporting him missing, it destroyed the forensic opportunity needed to resolve this contradiction.
That failure is the reason why, more than a decade later, we cannot move past speculation. It's why the family continues to grieve without a settled truth.
It's just a profound failure of the institutions that were designed to protect him, both in life and in death.
And when you look at this through the lens of institutional secrecy, the case forces you to consider the ultimate difficulty in separating professional espionage risk from private life mysteries, especially when those security agencies are involved in controlling the flow of information.
The essential chilling question this case leaves us with is this. Is it possible for a death to be both accidental in its immediate mechanism, say hypercapnia, but criminally enabled and covered up in its execution? If an intelligence analyst was forced into that situation by actors connected to the enemies he was tracking.
The enduring ambiguity of Gareth Williams's final moments serves as a powerful reminder of how challenging it is to find closure when security and intelligence services are linked to contested deaths. If you are interested in exploring how the Williams case fits into the wider context of contested conclusions, you might want to look into other listed unsolved deaths or complex, unusual deaths in the 21st century where the state's involvement has raised similar questions.
We deeply appreciate you joining us for this extensive analysis of this complex and deeply sad story.
We appreciate your attention.
Thanks for listening.